The US president has said that American forces have destroyed 10 Iranian mine-laying vessels in the Strait of Hormuz.
Well, Trump made the claim after earlier warnings that Iran of serious consequences if it had deployed naval mines in the strait. The US Central Command then released footage purportedly showing American forces destroying multiple Iranian naval vessels, including 16 mine layers near the Strait of Hormuz.
Trump's first post on the social media platform, Truth Social, came late in the afternoon after several US media outlets reported that Iran had either started or was preparing to mine the Strait of Hormuz. Initially, Trump said he had no confirmed reports that such action had already begun. Even his tweet, it started with "if," as you can see it on the screen as well. But then he warned that if Iran did so, the United States would respond with unprecedented military force, despite saying he had no confirmation about these reports. Less than an hour later, Trump then said that the US had already bombed Iranian mine-layer ships in the previous hours.
Well, later, Trump released another statement claiming that within hours, the US military had struck and destroyed 10 inactive mine-laying vessels.
Now, this development comes after Trump warned Iran of the consequences of trying to stop commercial shipping through the Strait of Hormuz. Iran, however, has vowed that no Gulf oil will pass through the waterway while the war continues.
Now, naval mines are explosive devices which are placed in water to damage or sink ships or submarines. They are a type of area denial weapon. Instead of chasing an enemy, they make certain waters too dangerous to even enter. They are usually triggered when a ship passes close to them. Naval mines are low-cost but high-impact weaponry.
While Iran's mine stock isn't publicly known, reports are suggesting that over the years, Iran has stockpiled roughly 2,000 to 6,000 naval mines, largely produced either by themselves or by China and Russia. Now, with the US claiming to have destroyed these mine layers near the Strait of Hormuz, that still leaves Iran well over 80% of its stockpile.
Now, the Strait of Hormuz is narrow, only about 24 miles wide at its narrowest point, with shipping traffic confined to a few lanes. Now, that means that ships must pass through predictable routes. A small number of mines can threaten many vessels. Even a few mines can force shipping to stop while minesweepers clean the area.
All right, there's more on this, and for that, we're now being joined live by Lynn O'Donnell. She's a journalist and author from Australia. Lynn, thanks so much for joining us here on the broadcast. Pleasure having you with us. The Strait of Hormuz, it was always going to be Iran's play. They had made it clear we will block it if we are attacked. That's exactly what they're doing, and the repercussions are being felt across the globe. Gradually, by the day, the pressure is increasing. Now, with the latest reports suggesting mines and, of course, repeated statements coming out from the US president, how do you see this one playing out in the Strait of Hormuz? How long do you feel Iran will be able to sustain it as US continues to bomb Iranian ships?
Hi, and thanks for having me once more. And you're absolutely right. The Strait of Hormuz is now the epicenter of the war. It always was going to be. It's just taken us a week to get there and to achieve the realization. But almost immediately, the American attacks and Israeli attacks began on Iran. It became very clear that the oil transport through the Strait of Hormuz, which is 20% of the world's total, would be targeted. So as you say, it's very narrow. 20% of the world's traded oil passes through there. So Iran is not able to defeat the United States conventionally, but you mentioned its capacity for mining the strait, for targeting the shipping route that is so vital to the global economy. What this basically means is that Iran's long-term investment in asymmetric naval warfare is coming into play, and it has been designed specifically for this environment: naval mines, fast attack boats, anti-ship missiles and drones. So by targeting Iran's mine-laying capability, what Washington is trying to do is prevent Tehran from threatening global shipping and energy flows, excuse me.
Right, Lynn. And speaking of the asymmetry here, we understand that this war has been described as a race of time, perhaps, and we understand that, while US possesses the superior firepower here, we understand that for Iran, it is designed in a way that the model is high endurance, and we know that given the asymmetry in terms of economy, in terms of the time that it can sustain the war, it has made it costly for the United States to sustain. And now with the economic cost rising, the human toll rising by the day, how long do you think the US would be able to sustain it and convince the American base of the rationale behind, this prolonged conflict?
Well, I think that that's a really good question. The United States appears to be pursuing a military containment strategy. If you can get anything out of their actions so far, and notably their words, that there is a strategy at all, we seem to have moved away from outright regime change into military containment, likely to degrade Iran's military capacity, its missile systems, naval capabilities, as we've just been discussing, and regional proxy networks, the Houthis, Hamas, Hezbollah, all of which are coming into play here around the region, so that Tehran cannot threaten Gulf shipping or Israel in the future. For Iran, the objective is different. Tehran's strategy is survival and deterrence. So by raising the cost of war to its enemies, threatening shipping, energy markets, regional stability, Iran hopes to pressure Washington and its allies into limiting their campaign. So the likely endgame is not victory in a traditional way, we win, you lose, which has always been the way President Trump has articulated deals, only one winner and everybody else loses. I don't think that we're there in that traditional sense, rather than a negotiated de-escalation once both sides judge that the costs of continuing in the way we've seen in the past 12 days is just too high and is outweighing any benefits to either party.
Lynn, interesting you mentioned wins and losses. At this point, what would a win for US really look like? And I'm saying they declare a win for themselves and walk off. I'm not talking about that. I'm saying genuinely what would a win for the US really look like? Because regime change is no longer happening. They already have a new supreme leader in place. They're not backing off. Whatever they have left, they are fighting. They're taking a bad amount of beating Iran, but they're not backing off. They're not capitulating either. So what does US walk out with if they have to? Because very quickly the question initially was how long will Iran last? But now the narrative seems to be on the other side. How long does the US want to last in this?
Well, I think that the negative impact on President Donald Trump and the Republican Party will start to be felt most likely at the petrol pump, the gas station, very soon. We're already seeing retail prices going up in some places in the United States. I've seen reports of 30% price hikes at the pump. Now, while the wholesale price, specifically of Brent crude, which is the benchmark product, has come back, the uncertainty in what the end game is, what victory looks like, how long this is going to go on, how much disruption Iran can cause, is going to start making Donald Trump and the people around him very nervous very soon. We've got to recall that we're going into the midterm elections. Campaigning will start. It will certainly move around the economy as Donald Trump's popularity figures are already well below 40% at this stage, and he risks losing control of both houses to the Democrats. So he will spin, and his people will spin victory however they want to. Whether or not we see the total disablement of Iran's terrorist proxies, as I mentioned before, Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis in Yemen, but also Tehran has relationships with the Taliban and all its close friends, if you like, associates in the region. Al-Qaeda is very active, is protected in Afghanistan, active in Africa and India. And so I think maybe the Trump administration might be able to call victory if these organizations and terrorist groups can be proven to be disabled, thereby pushing Iran back to within its own borders. And maybe negotiations on the constitutional requirement that Iran has for the utter destruction of Israel, maybe a change to that. But I think we have yet to see what victory looks like for either party. Probably for Iran, it's survival. For America, it will be something a little bit different, possibly guarantees of safety and survival for the Israeli state.
Right, Lynn, and in many ways this has also become a war of unintended consequences here, because while we understand that these two parties are in the fray, other regional players also have a stake in it. We're seeing Russia somehow becoming, and Vladimir Putin emerging as this, peacemaker here. And Russian government has a lot to gain from these rising oil prices. It is getting that boost, not just economically, but also diplomatically. Now, how do you think the regional dynamics are going to be also influenced by what we're seeing right now going ahead?
Well, you're absolutely right that Putin is starting to look like the real winner out of all of this. Surprise, surprise. Rising oil prices and a shock to supply plays right into his hands. The Russian budget is predicated on oil being more than $59 a barrel. And at one stage in the last couple of days, we've seen the crude price go up to $120. It's come back, but still it's way above the $59 a barrel that Russia needs. And so that's making him look good. He's also positioning himself, as you say, as the peacemaker, and that projects power to the Gulf countries that are currently feeling vulnerable because of the US actions against Tehran. I mean, this started as a war against one country, and suddenly there's, a dozen or more countries involved. The whole globe is now going into shock because of the likelihood of oil price shock and supply shock that will drive the prices at the pump up higher. So if Vladimir Putin can come to the rescue as an oil supplier, he wins both ways. He wins, as you say, diplomatically. He looks good in the region. He looks like a power player. He's already had 2 phone calls this week with President Trump, who's going to start, I think, relying on him. And he sells oil, very high prices. He can only win.
Interesting. You mentioned, how the entire region came into the fray of the ongoing war. But that's something Iran said they're going to do. They always mention that we're going to go after all these US bases in West Asia, and that's exactly what they're doing. Along with that, of course, they've also targeted many other regions which had nothing to do with US bases, but hotels were also targeted. Iran has their own reasoning for that. But if we come back to how Russia plays a role over here, the fact that Saudi Arabia, UAE, they've had decent relations with Russia in the past as well, in the recent past as well. There were state visits by the Russian president in these regions. There were also reports which emerged that the Gulf nations, they are reconsidering their investments in the US. And then you have Putin standing right there with decent ties with them, a base which is already laid, and who also has the capacity to rein in Iran if anyone does at this point. Do you feel US tends to lose big investment opportunities coming in from the Gulf nations?
I think that might be drawing a long bow. If Putin is a winner, it doesn't necessarily mean that the United States is a loser. And the level of investment going both ways between the United States and Gulf countries that you've mentioned, including Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and others, has just been phenomenal since in the 1 year since Trump came back to power. It's worth billions and billions of dollars. And his family and his close personal associates are the biggest recipients and beneficiaries of that for sure. But I can't see yet that wins for Putin means losses for the United States. I think we have to see things unfold a little bit further yet. We don't know how much time and energy is left in this. The rhetoric out of Washington changes every day. And this is another reason that the markets are so spooked. So let's give that a little.
All right, Lynn, thanks so much for joining us here. There's actually a lot more to discuss, but we'll keep it to here at this point. Let the developments come in and we've been discussing this in the newsroom, the way the war has escalated, it's really overwhelming just to absorb the developments that are coming in by the minute. We're tracking everything right here on WION World is One. That was Lynn O'Donnell joining us from Australia.
Thank you.